We're live. Tom's over there at the table going, "You're live." So I'm want to welcome everyone who's on the session tonight. Thank you for joining us. I think we've got all the bugs worked out, but I don't promise. So if anything goes a little, Brahmananda just raised his hand. What does that mean?
We have one quick announcement.
Please make the quick announcement, Tom.
Okay.
Turn to Tom.
Speaking of bugs, for those of you who have signed up for the entire remote retreat, I'm going to be sending out an email this evening that has an updated link, and that's how you'll access days 2 through 6 of the retreat. And to all of those of you here, we're delighted to have you. Welcome.
Now that was really well done, Tom. There's a job opportunity for you there. Okay, so I would like to be serious and welcome you all to session 1 of today's 6-day retreat here at Asilomar. This is our second time here, and I recognize a lot of faces, but we also have some new ones. So those of you this is your first time with Shree, go ahead and raise your hand. So there are a few. I know who you guys are. I know who's, Scott, good, welcome. So thank you. We are formal but informal in that Shree and I are just who we are up here at the front of the room. So sometimes I grab his water or he grabs my coffee. That does happen. That's okay. So anyway, so we're going to start out tonight. I'm just going to explain what's going to happen. I'm going to read the schedule of the programs, and then Shree is going to, am I reading the guidelines first?
Schedule first.
Schedule first, guidelines second, and then you're going to talk about setting the intent. And then he will do a revelation to get us started. So this is orientation, and this is setting the intent. So again, I want to welcome you. Thank you very much. Apparently now everybody knows how to access the materials if you're offline, if you're online, and everyone here should have a packet. All right, let us know if you don't have one. Hands went out. This person is Arjuna, for those of you who don't know him, and he will be here to help you if you have any questions. So let's just take a minute. We'll just pass these out. Now, a lot of you have done this many times with us, and it's pretty much always the same structure because Shree believes in a structure that he will repeat over and over again because you never know when that aha comes, and it does. At some point, you're like, oh, now I understand why he does this. So that is why it looks like the same, but it is never the same. It's always new. Okay, so we're going to start out with the schedule. And just if you have a question while I'm reading it, just raise your hand so I can answer. And those of you who are on the live broadcast, if you have a question, you can type it into your email on the Crowdcast. I think there's a place where it says Q&A. And Tom is manning the computer. So we try to answer as many questions as possible. Okay, so today is Sunday, the 15th. This is day 1. And right now we're at 7 o'clock or a little past. And this is our Fire and Heart orientation. Tomorrow morning, we ask that you're here 10 minutes early. We start the first meditation at 6 a.m. It is an hour and a half. This is a 6-day Fire and Heart. So it's an hour and a half. If you were here for a SOT program, a 9-day, it would be 2 hours. It goes by quickly. 7:30 to 8:30, or whatever it says on the ticket, is breakfast. And then until 10 a.m., you have personal time. So you can go hiking, walking, biking, whatever you feel to do, or just stay by yourself inwardly. Then from 10 to 11:30, we have meditation here in the kiln room. Next is lunch. And then until 4 o'clock, it is personal time. 4 to 5:30 is meditation. For those of you who are going to be in group 1, and we will be announcing that, you'll be meeting with Shree and your group leader in the Afterglow living room, which is right across the way. And there's a big sign that says Afterglow, and there'll be a sign that says New Dharma on there, so you'll know exactly which door to go into. So we have 4 groups, and each group meets with Shree one time. Okay. Then after that, we have 6 to 7 dinner, and 7 to 9 is our large group, again here in Kiln. On Tuesday, we start all over again. So the same schedule: morning meditation, breakfast, personal time. Meditation here. Personal time again. Meditation for everyone other than group 2 who will meet with Shree. And then dinner and a large group meeting here. Okay, day 4, again, the same thing, except at 4 o'clock will be small group 3. And then on day 5, and it will happen before we know it, this changes just a bit. So we will have 6 o'clock meditation, and then we'll have the personal breakfast and personal time, 10 to 11:30 meditation here, but 10 to 12 will be small group 4 at 10 o'clock. And then it'll be lunch, personal time. 4 to 6 will be a large group meeting, dinner, and then 7 to 9 is our second large group meeting. On day 6, already Friday, it'll be very simple. So meditation, breakfast. 9 to 10 is lodging checkout. There will be more information given to you the day before. And then from 10 to 12, we come in here and we have completion. And that will be an opportunity for anyone who has not already come to the front of the room to sit with Shree on the hot seat to do that. And then from 12 to 1 is lunch and goodbyes. Okay, any questions?
Okay, I'm feeling we should do that small group.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead, and what I'm going to do now is, so we and as many of you know, in our 6 and 9 days, and actually some of the other programs now, we are doing small groups. So for this program, we have 4 small groups. So I'm going to just do one group at a time. I'm going to ask the facilitator to stand up, and then I will call the names of the people in that group. Please note who you're with. Okay, the small group leader has the list of who's in their group, but write down which group number you're in. And then tonight, when the program is complete, then you'll have a chance to meet with your small group leader, small group facilitator, who will explain any other things that need to be explained. So group 1, Amanda, go ahead and stand up. Here she is. This is Amanda. She's from Toronto. Her trainer is going to be Aja, who's over here. So, all right. So those in group 1 are Usha K. Okay. I cannot say your last name, Usha. I will learn, though. You can teach me. Ramananda, Catherine, John Gorman, Angela, Gita, and Julia. Okay? You're with Amanda and Aja. All right, group number 2, Mukti, please stand up. This is Mukti, all the way from the East Coast. And Miriam, or Satyapriya, is your trainer, so she's right here in the purple scarf. Okay, the people in group 2 are Yasmin, Ravi, Brahmananda, John W., Monisha, AK, correct? Perfect. And Jess, Dory. Okay, you're group 2. Group 3, Savitri, Brahmananda.
I'm in group 1 or group 2?
You're in group 1. It was Brahmananda that I called. I understand it's distinctive. Yes. Okay, group 3 is Savitri. There she is. Okay, and her trainer is Tom over here. Okay, group 3 is Yukiko and Partha, Mike, who's new to us, Jasmine, Hemant, he's here somewhere, Stevio, right in front of me, and Mary Guzman. Okay. And group 4, Thomas Dockery. Thomas, here is Thomas. So your support trainer is Paul, and it's Scott Usdom, Gabriella, Karen Burke, Eric, Arjuna, Tara, and Usha R. Okay. Did I miss someone? Did someone not hear their name? Okay. So we got everybody. And so you'll just meet with your respective group after the program has ended tonight. Okay.
Very good. So we can go ahead and do the guidelines.
All right. So the next thing we're going to do are the guidelines. This is page 3.
So before Satyamayi steps into the guidelines, both the schedule and the guidelines are the way that we curate the vessel. That means that you're organizing your consciousness such that you're here 10 minutes before we meditate, that you not miss a session, that you show up on the schedule, and then the guidelines that you actually use these consciously to assist you in getting the most value possible. So the nature of my work is create a structure, a vessel in the physical dimension, as well as have a structure that comes on a consensus to follow the guidelines, to follow the principles that we have experienced, we have found, supports you in the journey. So this journey is not about you feeling good. It's not about you having it your way. It's not about you using this as an opportunity to become dissatisfied or to get right or to try to get control. It's rather for you to discover those things in you that cannot accept what is as it is. So the entire structure is set up so that you can meet whatever is there in your ego through this structure. Consciousness loves a structure. If consciousness is allowed to flow, it will not change. It is only when it's defined, confined, only when it's in a structure that it begins to show what's not aligned with it and what is. What is in you that can meet the purpose, which we'll talk about later, that you brought with you. The intention and the purpose that you actually had you sign up and show up and be with me in this opportunity. So I want to speak to that. We are building together, co-creating, by the way, through our application of effort and discernment, the opportunity of these next 5-6 days. So the way to listen to the guidelines is like the secrets to how you can reveal your true nature or that which is in the way of your true nature. It's going to happen. I know that part. Your part is to play your part. And this is your part. To show up with intentionality, to honor the vessel we're co-creating, to know that when you don't show up, you weaken the vessel by that proportion, and that it affects everyone else. When we can align ourselves commonly with the intent, then the full possibility of what can be created in this time together will be realized. Now, I feel it will be realized anyway, but if the structure is not honored, there will be disruptions. There will be structures that will create disruptions for yourself and for others. So in this way, we can bring the greatest alignment, harmony, collaboration, cooperation, in order for this possibility of our time together to manifest. Okay, that's the attitude I invite you to hold, that this is something sacred, and you create the sacredness. I'm not creating the sacredness. I'm giving you a means by which you can create the sacredness. Okay, good.
Okay.
Let's go.
So here we go. Guidelines. The following guidelines for the retreat are meant to assist you and your fellow participants with holding the integrity of this vessel so the intent of this program can be realized. To ensure a serene and a harmonious environment, please observe the following guidelines. Remain silent at all times during the retreat, except at the work sessions. All communications are to be in writing and only if there is a necessity. Review the retreat schedule. Show up at least 10 minutes prior to each session. Any problems or questions involving the facility or other issues are to be communicated to Saraswati and Arjuna. So take a look if you do not know who they are, because we have new people in the room. So make sure you know. Arjuna, raise your hand again, and Saraswati, good that you stand up so she can see you. Okay, perfect. We ask that you do not use any electronic devices, such as cell phones, computers. Kindle use is okay. Stay on the grounds for the duration of the retreats, except for walks or hikes. So, yes, this is less of an issue. There's a great coastal path, there's hikes, there's bicycles. Feel free to exercise. Shree actually encourages it, but just make sure you're back here on time. If there's a necessity to leave, so the only thing I can think of is a medical emergency, you make sure that Arjuna or Saraswati knows, and they will also let Shree know. So food's prepared for you at the retreat, so there's nothing just except what is provided. No sex, smoking, drugs, or alcohol.
Okay. So just some things I would like to go over with you. So effectively, this is you could say, conditional silent retreat. We're going to be sitting for an hour and a half, 3 times a day. That's almost the same as we said in the 9-day retreat. The force of the Sat will build in you in that time frame, and it will start activating qualities and aspects of yourself you normally aren't exposed to. It'll start pushing to the surface, and we'll talk about this later, whatever is hidden or whatever is possible coming to the surface. And when it does, you may not recognize it. You'll just know that, screw it, I am not going to show up. That's what you will recognize. You will find the resistance. You'll get irritated with your roommate. You'll decide that this was a mistake and that you should leave right away in order to save your soul. You will have any kind of variation of what is there that's hidden in you that really you have not had to come to presence with before. Usually we become a victim of this where we run from it or try to control it or make it go away. But here is your opportunity to be in relationship with it, to be in presence. Whatever comes up that's in resistance of the structure, to recognize this is a part of your ego that is trying to lay claim in such that you don't leave it behind. I assure you, the greatest gift you could have is if your ego was left behind. But until then, it's quite convincing in its argument that it is you. So waking up to that part of you that still runs you is part of what may show up in the course of this. And this is where it could become a real test. Now, it can be other things. You go for a bike ride, think your time is just fine, and you realize you're 20 minutes late. If you're 20 minutes late, you do not come into the room. If you're 10 minutes or less, yes, come into the room quietly for the silent sittings. So the consequence for that would be that you don't do any more additional disruption by showing up when the energy is already in motion and set. There's some other things on this. 10 minutes before. The ideal is to be here 10 minutes before to unwind from whatever was the break before. I mean, you'd be coming out of sleep the first session, less of an issue. But in the midday or the later in the day sessions, you may have been on a bike ride, you may have had some encounter, you may have had some quite disruptive energy showing up for you. So this is your opportunity to come down into that quality of silence, of stillness, which is the base of where you can perceive and be in presence with what is yet hidden or obscured or not articulate in you. So this issue with electronic devices, the Kindle use is okay, but of course only for spiritual books, only for something that keeps you connected through reading to your own spiritual nature. Don't use it to check the news or see what's up next on Netflix or to see if there's been any messages back home to distract you. It'll be like you're looking for the distraction. So this whole idea of putting the cell phones aside, using it only for an alarm clock, not to use it to get up to date or see who's texting you or your latest Facebook posting, so that you can come out of that whole paradigm for these next 5 days. Okay, I think that's all on that group. Let's go ahead.
So honor what you're trying to create for yourself during this retreat. Remain inwardly silent and outwardly quiet as possible. Strive to accept the conditions of the retreat, your room, meals, your roommates, etc., as an opportunity to let go of your preferences and habits. Notice your reactions, feelings, and thoughts. Record these along with any insights, revelations, or realizations.
Okay, so it's good to journal. It's good to journal because you may travel a lot of distance in these next 5 days, and you will not be able to remember what happened the day before or 2 days before or 3 days before. So if something shows up for you, dark or light or in between, that you feel to make a note of, it's useful to have it so that later in the retreat you can look back and get some perspective on whatever may be arising at that time. So there is this constant movement energetically in this program that the more you can keep in touch with it, collaborate with it, and journaling is one of the ways that allows you to deepen whatever has come to you into your surface consciousness, into your personality. So if you don't have a journal with you, there's extra paper on all of these handouts that you can write in. And it can also become the place where perhaps there is something you want to share or questions you wish to ask of me. And then we have a place by which you can notes or...
So we have a journal, we have a book in the back of the room. Oh yes, we have a basket in the back of the room with a big sign, Notes for Shree. He does, usually he reads all of them.
I read all of them.
And
I may not respond to all of them.
He may not respond to all of them, or his response may be the topic of the next talk. So you never know. So it just depends. All right.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, let's see. Silent sitting. Do you want to speak about that? Why don't you do this one?
Okay. So as most of you know, our practice is silent sitting. So it's not about necessarily meditation. It's not about necessarily reaching an altered state. That may happen. That may be perfectly appropriate. But the nature of the silent sitting is to be with yourself in your body. And the idea of that is that when you begin to enter into the silence, it is always, of course, best to relax, to let go, to be as comfortable as you can, sitting in chairs, or we'll speak of this later perhaps. And in that process, allow yourself to be aware of your breathing and any energy that's arising in your body. And then notice what's arising in that process, and then repeat. So this idea of constantly coming back to being in with you in present time, at least until the thoughts quiet and the presence comes, or the felt connection that you have starts rising to the surface. Then you follow that. You stay with the presence. You stay with the feeling. You allow that to establish itself in that sitting. So sometimes some of you may fall asleep, and I think we'll talk of some of this. So the whole structure of this program isn't about you being in a certain kind of consciousness, But the more it's, of course, you're going to be sitting in chairs, most of you, so it'll be quite difficult to sleep. But no matter what happens, what's unique in the field of my energy is there's a transmission. And the quality of this transmission can be best taken advantage of by being relaxed and open. Relaxed and open, simple, quiet, sitting. So the less your mind is spinning, the less you're in turmoil, the more you're able to receive. If you're going to be in turmoil, we'll talk about this here, is how do you meet that turmoil during your silent sitting? Then that becomes your arena of work. Whatever is arising within that space is often trying to show you or demonstrate something to you, which you may or may not catch at that time, but which allows you to be conscious with it as it arises in you. So that's a brief overview. So let's go over the specifics.
Okay. So we ask that you do not leave the circle. We ask that you not leave the room during the sitting. You may leave the room after Shree has left. Move as little as possible. If you need to move or change positions, just do so slowly and as quietly as you can. Make as little noise as possible. If you need to cough or sneeze, do so into a cloth. So we actually ask, bring a towel from your bathroom or something like that. So it's substantial enough to cover. And the reason we ask you to do that is we just sneeze or cough. And if we're in a meditation, it can be really disruptive. It's not, it's not your fault, but it will go right through the room. Because some people do tend to transcend during these silent sittings, and it'll just knock you right back into your chair. So that's really actually the only thing we ever really emphasize. You can sit on the floor or in chairs. So if those of you brought back jacks for the silent sitting, are we going to be setting that up, Brahmananda? Have we talked about that? Or is everybody...
My thought was that after tonight, you can set up for meditation. If you don't want your chair, we'll stack it.
Okay. So after the group is over tonight, those of you who want to sit in a back jack, if you brought a special chair, you just have to replace your chair and put it in the back, and they're going to stack them. Okay. No leaving to go to the bathroom. So you go for the silent sittings, and then you can leave afterwards. We ask that you try not to fall asleep, but it's not always possible, but it's best not to sleep. No drinks except water, and we ask that it's in a container with a closed lid. No reading or writing during the sits, no standing or moving about except to stretch. So people oftentimes will just stand up and stretch. If you have a lot of trouble with your back or whatever, just see me before the program. Sometimes people have gotten up and just stood up against the wall, and so that's still allowable.
So the nature of the program, there's quite a different types of events that can happen for people. So one of the things is if you're in control of your body and it's acting like, for example, kriyas, where there are sudden movements that you sense might disturb your neighbor, then you can move quietly into the back of the room. If you go into a process that's very intense and you're having trouble holding the process, also go into the back of the room, and someone will come and support you through the process. It will, and if necessary, take you out of the room into a place where you're free to complete the process. So, but for the most part, stay within your seat, stay within what is arising with you. Don't feed into a drama story that you may have around your issue, or notice the tendency in you that may come up and want to make it into a drama story. So we're really here to honor the process for not only ourselves, but everyone else who's in the room. It's not to diminish whatever may be arising with you. It's rather finding the most appropriate expression for you in this context.
Well, the other thing that will often happen too is that somebody may appear to be sleeping and will start snoring. And that doesn't mean their body may be sleeping, but they may be in a transcendent state. So we ask that you just don't touch them. Okay. And if Shree feels to do so, he'll go and just, nudge them. But generally,
Almost never do I do
almost
that.
never, I know.
So it's your opportunity to be with the person next to you who is snoring, ruining your meditation.
It always happens. Okay. Do we have any questions? Does anybody have any questions yet? Okay.
Okay.
The last thing is silent sitting exercises. And do you want to talk about this?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So we ask that you be aware of your breath, be aware of the energy in your body, be here now, the present moment. Notice what resists being present. Notice blocks, resistances, pressure, pain, basically anything you're saying no to. Identify where they are in your body. Put your attention on that location, feeling into the experience until it speaks to you or it fades. Notice what is going on in your body. Try to identify its source. Hint, its origin is not outside of yourself. So the snoring, yes, there's snoring. But whatever's going on inside, that's where you're going to go. Record your insights into a journal. We also ask that you conduct no other spiritual practices during the silent sittings, such as mantras or prayers, without Shree's okay. And also no fasting during the retreat. Okay?
Okay. There are some things I want to point out here. The nature of the ego is essentially creating separation. So you could say that anything that arises in you, although it's truly arising in you, but is negative, is your ego. Now, no recognizing that what's arising in you as negative takes a certain higher degree of consciousness than most people. Because when you're in negativity, the tendency is to have a trouble with the world rather than what is actually going on with you. So the idea of when you catch yourself getting irritable, when you catch yourself projecting thoughts onto other people, you can catch yourself in a reaction that has something to do with a signal that's coming from the outside world, then you can be assured that that is a showing of your ego. So the quality of consciousness that will allow you to see that is going to be different than your ordinary consciousness while you're in this program. The light of your consciousness is going to increase in frequency and density so that it will be more alert to that irritation or to that projection or to that negativity than in the normal course of your life. So it'll begin to reveal structures that are running you that you would not normally notice or are so taken over by the compensating structures of your ego that you don't recognize as negative or limiting your presence or limiting your ability to be. We are actually creating the life as we know it due to these unmet parts of our multiple selves, our egoing. Therefore, in order to recover our true nature, we have to begin a process of dismantling those structures, seeing them and dismantling them. And this is what we'll talk about in this program. So in order for you to actually be able to take the teachings that are going to be coming to you, this will be what will arise as one of numbers of things that can arise. You can have wonderful things arise, and you can have horrible things arise, and best of all, you can have nothing arise. And why nothing arising? Because you can guarantee somebody's hiding, something's hiding in you, doesn't want you to know. Some habit of yourself, some routine that you've been doing, some investment in your strategy in life, some idea of yourself, some principle that you've been holding on to without recognizing is going to be hidden in that nothing arising. So the nature of that nothing is actually a tremendously fruitful exploration. So don't be fooled. Now, what is the nature of that something, or what is the nature of that nothing? This is actually the opportunity. It's not always going to be apparent. But if you keep an attitude of finding, of discovering what is in you that separates you from your divine nature, then this becomes an arena, a space with for that which is still hidden in you, that is in the way of manifesting your intent for being here, your purpose, which, by the way, is the purpose of your entire life. It's in the presence. It's in the intentionality. It's entering into the space as I talk right now. So these are techniques that you can bring, maybe even bring in this page, so that when the nothing's happening, if that should be the case, or when the something is happening, if that would be the case, you could use this as a reminder of what to do with the time. Now, some of you, the nature of time is going to be demonstrated to you in different ways. Mostly, it will go slow. You'll be sitting silent and still. You think you're doing really good. And before you know it, you suspect it'll be over and 10 minutes has gone by. So there is this interminable quality that comes when we're sitting in silence and stillness, especially if our system tends to be rajasic. If we tend to lots of action, lots of busyness, lots of thinking, lots of things of keeping us busy or distracted. So you're going to meet that which all that busyness covered up. All that activity was a compensating structure for. So your job is to train yourself to be simple, silent, still. Think of a flower or a tree. Doesn't know jack shit. It just is there. Sun rises, sunset, it's cold, it's hot. Things happen right around it. All this is going on and the flower is just there. Find that quality like lilies in the field. Be simple, silent, still. When you find that, from that place, you'll discover what is either your true nature or what is in the way of your true nature manifesting more fully. So the issue with other spiritual practices or mantras, any mantra that I've used that you have heard or that you use that have come from me, you're free to use that, at least for parts of the time, to help you just get established. For the rest of you, I recommend just breath and presence and being in your body, and to try to relax into the field of energy that's going to build in this room together. So we're in an attitude of finding, an attitude of discovery.
I'm going to interrupt you before you get going.
Yeah, I think I was already going.
Well, no, you were already going, but I'm going to interrupt you because I also want to speak to what he and I are doing in the front of the room together, because some people here are new, and it helps to kind of set a space for what happens up here. So Satri and I work together as a team. We did not start out that way. This is the guy who had the big kahuna realizations and energy for years and years and years, and spent many years in India fine-tuning his teachings. And then about 3 years ago, I began to also go through a process, not the same as his, is my process. I am more of a Shiva, Shakti mixture of something. But anyway.
A lot of Shiva.
But some Shakti.
Or Kali.
Kali. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So we do work together as a team up here. mostly Shree does the teaching. That is what his position is. That's who he is here in the room. He brings in the force. I bring in somewhat of a force, but nothing like his. And we also play off of each other. So a lot of time I will be the one doing the readings, and Shree will be doing the revelation he has from the readings. Other times we just spontaneously will start talking and bring something into the room. A lot of times I will just simply sit here in silence. And other times, like I am pretty much the energy sink. Sometimes I'm holding so much energy, I will go out. So no, I'm not sleeping, just to let you know. Some people are like, she's up there sleeping. But as the energy comes in, it's so compelling, you guys. It's almost impossible to stay focused and in the room. So I do the best I can, but sometimes I just let it go. And it's really a nice break. So let's see what else. We are informal, but we're also formal. We're also here with an intention. So that's part of what I'm speaking into the room is the intention of what we're doing up front. So if you ever have any questions, feel free to ask me afterwards. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so I want to talk about an inherent capacity you all carry. We all carry. But before I get there, I want to speak to what I like to call it is the purpose that got you into the room. Or you could just say, why are you here? It's a very useful inquiry, I've noticed. It's because for me, it's no accident that we're together. For those of you in the room and those of you who are watching, there is something in your very being that has directed you, as it has throughout your whole life, to this moment. However, I know what I am. And I also know what you are. So I know that this moment has a potential, has a possibility that is unlike, if not all, at least most of all the other moments that have come in your life. And the nature of this moment is it allows you to choose this moment, to choose to enter into the arena that I'm offering, to enter into this vessel. And by the way, you have already chosen. How do I know? Because you're sitting in your chair. Because you're aware you're here. Anyone who has the awareness of their own existence qualifies. Is there anyone here who's not aware of their own existence? Anyone here who doesn't exist? Son of a bitch. Nobody again. All right. So the nature of this quality that you have is already existing. It actually is not new to you. It's actually something that's been there all along, but you've taken it for granted. You haven't paid attention to it. You don't know its nature, nor have you tapped its full potential or possibility. So it's one thing to have an intellectual discussion of this, but it's another thing to actually generate the space, generate the quality of potentiality that can push forward something out of that latent capacity into something that's in your face. So it's actually a process by which what it is that's already there gets revealed. Now, it's not only just in your surface waking consciousness awareness. It's in the field of your entire system. I speak of system. The system is the body, the drives, the emotional nature, the mind, the memory, the psychic being. All of these make up you, each of us. This is our vehicle for operating in this dimension. This is the means by which we seek to work out and resolve the particular structures that we brought with us, that we inherited, or that we took on through the actions in our own life. You could say the consequences of our living as human beings showing up. These consequences are called karmas. They're also called samskaras or vasanas that coat our ability as the experiencer, as the knower, and as the perceiver. And as long as these qualities, these habitual structures that have shaped us in our entire life, are not seen or experienced or met consciously, they persist in veiling us. They persist in obscuring our ability to perceive, to know, to experience. When you begin to actually, in your body, in your vital, in your mind, or in your psychic, begin to connect to that original reality that you are, then these conditioned structures, these inherited tendencies start coming to the surface. They can come to the surface as a rash. They can come to the surface as a twitch. They can come to the surface as an indistinct discomfort or a painful recall of a past experience that seems way out of proportion to what you've experienced before. It is a pushing up that which is hidden in any one of these components of your system in order to be dissolved in the field of your consciousness. As this process goes on, the more you're able to choose to move into relationship with that which rises up, the more consciousness you have available to you to meet those issues. And there is this sense of expanding sense of self, expanding clarity, expanding moving into the right relationship with existence that'll occur in this process. What does this do? It allows you to find what's there. It allows you to be with aspects of yourself that are so foundational, so in the background, so unrecognized, so habitual, so ubiquitous that you don't even know it's there. These things can be as simple as a choice or a decision you made about yourself, like, I'm not good enough, or it's not safe, or I'm never going to get what I want. Or it could be subtler, something you picked up from the adaptions of your parents, your mother or your father. And how do you know if any of these are yours? If you're repulsed by them, if you can't be with them, because then there's something in you that's so wounded, it can't tolerate being activated. So that if you want to know what's hidden in you, look how you're experiencing the people around you, the world around you. So part of the way of this process is that a person will pop up into your life, one of examples. And that person you hadn't thought about for a long time, but they show up, and then all the structures that you have that person represents for you will show up as if it was really happening now. And you'll say, holy cow, all this is happening. And I thought it was long gone. So that recognition of something that was hidden, revealing itself in that way, is the opportunity of this program to move into relationship with that, to be able to discover its nature, not just in the recognition, but also to find it in your emotional body, to find it in your physical body, as a means of fully meeting the not only apparency, but the underlying causes or sources. If you should do so successfully, there will be this sense of release or a quieting or a sense of complete falling away of whatever that may be. That's evidence that you just swallowed a piece of obscurity, a piece of resistance, a piece of a story or an attitude or a quality of yourself that you didn't know was running you. When this comes up, what comes to you is the true quality, which is choice. The ability to go down the negative rabbit hole or story or belief or strategy or compensating structure that has been running your life up until this time, and to decide not to do so again, and to decide not listen to it, to not listen to its promptings, to not keep empowering it with our story and subsequent story, to hold it and feel the disorder and the disruption and the dis-ease that it brings in your body until it completes. Now, for some of you, you've been doing this work for some time. You've opened up some space in you. When you open up some space, you do another program and you get to meet another part that has not been opened up. This endless harvesting. We're a mining enterprise where we're digging into the quantum of material that still obscures you from the truth of what you are, still limits its ability to fully be expressed or experienced in your life, to fully give you that sense of freedom and power and autonomy to choose rather than be run by or live with those structures that have been running you. So I invite you to join me in this intent, to join me into using this program, this vessel, this container, as a paradigm, as a space to hold in which will arise that which is hidden and that which is obscured, as well as that which is true and that which you already know but have forgotten. You're all finders, not seekers. You think you're a seeker, and that gets in the way of you finding what you already are. This premise that you need to attain something or be different or better, it carries with it a fundamental error, because what you are is right here, right now. And is this principle in you that got you into this room and has presented you this opportunity to bring your surface self into collaboration to that truer part of your being. Okay. Now, this is essentially the work I do in all my programs. This is the work, is this constant delving into the hidden, bringing it to light. My job is to train people to be darkness eaters. You can eat the darkness, the light's going to expand automatically. If you can meet what's in the way, you're immediately going to open more space for you to come into existence. So this is the nature of the opportunity of all my work. But this program is going to focus, yes, on truth, but also, yes, on the force of love, the force of inclusion. Truth separates us from untruth. Love converts untruth into truth. Love has an ability to permeate into the very structures of our separateness and dissolve their story in the ananda, in the fullness, in the aliveness, in the immediacy that unconditional love can bring. Okay, so I'm going to read something into the room. By the way, it's not something you have to...
Are you reading or am I reading?
Yes, you're going to read. We're going to read. Thank you, dear.
Okay, just want to be sure.
We're going to read into the room something of the unique quality of this program, which is called Fire and Heart, or Fire and Love. Truth and Love.
Truth and love, fire and heart.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Introduction, the fire of love. Love is the delight of consciousness as it interacts with existence. It is the fire that awakens when the heart opens. This fire is the truth of consciousness, and love is the experience one feels when the heart opens. In spiritual parlance, this love is called Ananda, the delight of being. Ananda is the ability of consciousness to experience, learn, and grow as it interplays with existence. Our own self-awareness is due to this interplay of consciousness with our body. In its purity, the human body is a vessel of pure delight. Consciousness comes into existence to experience this delight. In the human body, consciousness wakes up. This is what allows us to know we are alive, to have an identity, and to learn, grow, and connect to others, to discover the nature of ourselves and this world we live in.
So there is an unfolding of the development of consciousness as we've all gone through from our childhood into our youth, into our adolescence, into our young adulthood, into the middle stage of our life, and to the end stages of life. That there is a natural maturing process that all human bodies go through. When my awakening happened, I recognized right off the bat that this awakening was the byproduct of a process that I didn't know, but I knew it was purposeful. I knew that I didn't do that. And I also knew that what had awakened in me, so extraordinary and unspeakable that it had been, the paradigm that I had been thrown into that I never imagined existed, was probably there all along. And that I just did not know that it was there because of some aspect of myself that was separating itself from it, some unfolding, some unripeness, some not yet open bud that was preventing me from knowing it. So in that moment, I knew that my whole life was as a seed planted in the ground, the roots going into the soil, and the shoot going up, not knowing it was going up. So most of our human lives is this aspiring for something higher, not knowing what that is. It might be the newest love. It might be some worldly accomplishment. It might be something in the course of our life that we want or long for or wish we had, or story we make. So it's this movement that arises from within us that is living us already, that the shoot itself doesn't know it's going upward. It is simply responding to that which lives it and coming into existence. And it can't know anything more than what it can know at any one point. And just as a shoot, when it penetrates the soil and comes to the air and the light, changes, experiences something utterly different than the darkness and the wet that it knew before. So too do we awaken at that time in our evolutionary, the unfolding of consciousness within ourselves. And this awakening can happen in our awareness, it can happen in our experience, and it can happen in our body. It can happen in all three or any two. It is an unfolding based on the readiness of the structure of our separate self that is most mature, most ripe, to release the hold on its ability to experience or know itself and existence. When the flower penetrates the soil, it responds. It doesn't think to respond. It just grows leaves. It just forms a bud. It doesn't know it's forming a bud. It's just this unfolding that occurs. We are very much like this. The only difference between us and a flower is we have self-awareness. And the nature of self-awareness is basically a sense of identity. And that identity develops according to what we associate with what we attend to, what we make important. And that thing we attend to becomes us. So if we notice at some point as a child wakes up to yourself as a person, then you become aware of yourself being aware of being in existence. There is a point where we wake up to being in existence. I remember when it happened for me, 7 years old on a boat in San Francisco Bay, where I looked out and what came to me, and I remember it to this day, is I am here. I'm here. Like I made it. Like I made it. I am in a body on the planet, on this boat overlooking San Francisco Bay. 7 years old. Now in me, and for anyone else up to that point, it's so self-evident you don't even know it exists. But for me in that moment, I knew I exist. That quality of in one moment of now, we're there for it. And we say, I am here now. So that was my first awakening in this life. Now, fell back into the background, and I went about being the person I had been before I was in that moment, not recognizing that something in me was in a new relationship with existence than before that moment. That's when I discovered guilt. That's when I discovered I could do something wrong. That's when I started to doubt myself. That's when I started getting confused. So I woke up to what I was associating with, this vehicle that I took on when I took this birth, this story of me that I accumulated to that point. And I became aware of that I was something more than what I had been before. And of course, as in the case of Adam and Eve, when they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, I was no longer in Eden. I was no longer in the bliss of ignorance. I was no longer in that condition of consciousness I had been before. And so what happened? Suffering happened. Separation happened. Doubt, guilt, anger, resentment, competition happened. And there it came into existence. So in that process, what happened? What happened is I became aware, and then what I was attending to, I took personally. I became identified with. If a negative thought arose, I became the negative thought. And in that adaptation, I made a story about that negative thought. And then that negative thought affected my behavior, so I was no longer spontaneous or natural in interacting with the world. I not only became distrustful of me, I became distrustful of others. I became overtaken by the ancestral karma, overtaken by the collective agreement, overtaken by the programming that had been there before but hadn't really registered. Perhaps I had been that way before, but now I was attuned to it. And I took blame for it. I took responsibility for it. I felt guilty for it, or I felt resentful and frustrated for it. So welcome to the next stage of our unfolding. Then you start meeting next stage of socialization, where you're 9 or 12 or 10. I remember being on the playground, concrete playground of my school in Richmond, which proved to be a battlefield that was really about survival, where there seemed to be a lot of enemies and very few friends, where I was alone in that field. And thus was the beginning of my socialization. Thus, I began to form an identity, which was mostly about, like most guys, not being vulnerable and being able to talk back equally to how you were being talked at. And there became this kind of adaptation. And then I became that. I became that who could be, unliked, or that which could be wrong, or that which needed to be right, needed to be in control, needed to assert itself. In women, of course, it's a completely different paradigm. And in every man, it's different. Every one of us is different. But this whole process of emerging into what it means to be a bound human being can only be experienced by human beings. Flowers can't do it. Animals can't do it. They don't have guilt. They don't have shame. They don't have embarrassment. However, we do. And that's the nature of God when it takes on a body that comes from nature, is it loses itself and that which associates with. When the divine comes into the planet, when consciousness comes into the planet, it's pure and free. Those of you who can remember your past lives, you can know the difference between where you were before you took a birth and where you are when you take a birth. And you know it sucks. And you know it must have been a mistake. And certainly these can't be the right people. And they certainly are not competent to raise me. So if you came with enough awareness with you, you come into life with this recognition that, whoa, wait a second. I forgot how bad it is here. So that's a sign of a mature soul. And what is the sign that does? It creates greater suffering. Suffering and awareness are directly proportional as a human being. When you're still in bondage, waking up to your bondage is suffering. But what we don't know, why this creates suffering, is we don't know our own power. We don't know our own authority. We don't know our true nature. So therefore, this suffering compounds and compounds and compounds, puts pressure on the truth in us, which feels more and more bound, until one is in a state of what the Gita talks as dejection. This anguish at being trapped in being this miserable creature called you. And even though there may be compensating structures, it's always in the way of a lasting, true relationship with existence. It's always temporary. It's always cyclic, even at the best. Even when we learn and we come out of our adolescence, we come out of our early adulthood and are able to find some right relationship with existence, it's always a struggle to hold on to it. It's always a struggle to keep in touch with it. Now, of course, it's much more available for us in the neurotic West. In arenas where we're no longer being held in the village or having many family members, or our parents are together all our lives, that in the vulnerability that our new society has created, many individuals are cast adrift before they're ready. And so we're always struggling with this sort of need for something we didn't get. And it ends up to be structures that keep us in this desperate seeking all through our life for something that we didn't get back in the past. Therefore, we bring with us into this life this remnant of our undeveloped self that keeps tripping us. We keep limping. We keep being set back by these adaptions of our childhood. Now, as we wake up, we get more discrimination. We get a larger perspective. We come out of our 9 to 11-year-old socialization and say, I don't need to do this anymore. You can find friends that are in agreement with you. You discover some power and authority over yourself in your life. You start making choices with the hope of being able to find greater happiness or greater fulfillment for yourself. But they will all carry some degree of whatever's left in you that has been undeveloped up to that point. So this is the predicament that we come until awakening happens. Now, it's also true that many people can get psychotherapy, can get human developmental technology, they can get healings, they can get lifestyle changes that creates a more favorable environment for yourself. All of this is where we move out of our adolescence into our adulthood and start taking greater and greater responsibility for the quality of our lives as we grow up. Now, everyone in this room has been through this to some extent. However, 80% of mankind doesn't even know it's an option. 80% of mankind is just acting out the structures it inherited from its parents. They're just instruments or channels for the vendetta of our religion or our culture or our tribe. And there is essentially in a condition of ignorance. And the nature of people who are in a condition of ignorance is they don't know in ignorance because they're so busy acting out the compensating structures of their suffering. The nature of suffering is it gets relief when it can create suffering. It's inevitably the case. We look someone to blame. We look someone to make wrong. We look to someone to diminish. This is what human beings do. We're the worst of the worst. We're the monster nature created unwittingly, but we're also carry the light, the greatest light that nature could ever create. The nature of awakening spiritually is that we recover, at least at the moment of awakening, and for perhaps some time longer, something of our original nature. We emerge out in the contrast from the darkness into the light of our original nature. And that sense of what we've become is not clear yet, but we know we're no longer what we were. I like to use the words what and who. So we wake out of who we are into what we are. And what the advantage of this perspective is, we can now see where we're identified without being attached to it, without being run by it, without being defined and determined by it, for as long as the awakening lasts. But inevitably, when you wake up to something that you don't yet know, that there's nothing in what you've known before that helps define it, it's hard to hang on to. It seems like it's a grace, like it's an accident, like I felt when my awakening happened. It was just a fluke, and I thought I would be one time and that would be it. But when it started repeating itself and kept happening, that's when I began to recognize that I was coming into relationship with something that I truly was versus what I thought I was, to what was really true in my existence. And that sense of the trueness of it brought with it this unspeakable experience of unconditional love. This love that arises from no source recognizable, but from within. A fountain of a quality of being that moves into delight in relationship with existence from within. And there, from that place, see only love everywhere. How different it is from human love, where we seek what it is in us that's missing through another. And we look for that love in that other. And maybe we can see it because there's a certain affinity. When we were kids, we had a teddy bear. And this person shows up in your life like a teddy bear. And you fall in love with them. And that becomes the avenue by which you can experience that lost love within yourself through another. Then you become dependent on them for that, being able to experience that love. And then when they're not their best self, when they are actually starting to demonstrate what they really are, not what you imagine them to be, then you begin to lose access to that thing you were having when you were with them before. And then it turns to whatever it turns to, familiar territory. How about that? Any long-term relationship becomes this constant process of meeting what's in you that's in the way of that love that was once there. If that love was ever there. Many people imagine love. They live in a fantasy of love. They live in the romantic story, the Walt Disney story of what love is. You know, unicorns and fairies and you know, pastel flowers flowing up. Look at weddings. I mean, it's just like they're all like that. It's like false advertising. Because we project, we look for something that's actually within, but don't know it's within. And we bring out into life in whatever vehicle, through our heart, through our imagination, or through our sexual drives, our body, to whatever matches the affinity of what is there in our story, or our hope, or our imaginings, or our fantasies. This is the thing with imaginings. The human being, like no other creature, can imagine. It can have ruminations. It can create hope. There's nothing in nature that needs hope. Only man needs hope. Hope for relief from being who they are. Hope for something better. There's no need for future in nature because there's nothing in nature that questions what's here, right now. We're the only ones who can question, who go say, I want it different, who needs it different, or imagines you need it different. It's only us that imagine we need beyond our physical requirements. It's only us that can carry that need into this craving, into this story, into this tragedy, or in this epic proportions. We write books and we have movies about the drama of really something that natural beings hardly pay attention to. I mean, take sex, for example. One thing you can know about sex reduced to its basics, you can discover walking around the mountain in Arunachala in Tiruvannamalai. Because there the monkeys will come out and they'll show you what love is in about 3 seconds. They're both in agreement. Poop happens, little movement, done. No drama, no story. You left me, you abandoned me, now I'm pregnant, you're the father, I'm going to sue you. No, none of that. Spontaneous expression without any guilt or doubt or projection or judgment. That's what it is to be in Eden. But we're not destined for Eden. We're destined for hell. That's it. We're destined for suffering. And the journey of human consciousness is to move into relationship to that which we have not been willing to meet, and in the meeting of which the suffering is converted into love, into freedom, into spaciousness. And in that process, we purify our own consciousness, and then in the process start purifying the consciousness of those around us by our ability to meet the error that wasn't our fault ever, but which we took on as part of the destiny of a self-aware being in existence, to serve a purpose, by the way, to serve something greater. Because it's very clear in my experience, that the highest light is proportional to the greatest darkness we've been able to be with. The more we can meet what is hidden, obscured, unconscious, or dark that runs us, the more proportional light becomes available to us. So what is it about darkness that's the problem? We've been running away from it all along. We've been seeking claim for the little piece of happiness, the little peace, the little pleasure, the little delight that we can find, and we cling to that. We try to arrange for only that, and we try to keep away anything that could get in the way of that little piece of enjoyment, sensual enjoyment, mental enjoyment, vital enjoyment, companionship enjoyment, friends enjoyment, any of these things we keep seeking to hang on to. And as soon as you're seeking, you're trying to create something that's not already here. And it's doomed to fail. Now, sometimes nature is in confinement. You can create something positive and it lasts for some time. But even if it lasted your whole life, it's going to end when your life ends. And unless you can find that source from within yourself, unless you can move into relationship with that which can experience the joy of being in existence, then no matter how much you seek outward for the joy, it will not last. It will always be temporary and reoccurring in nature. But the part of you that can enjoy when it arises and can be in enjoyment when it goes, then that joy is your own joy. That peace is your own peace. So when we awaken, that's our introduction to that essential quality of us that actually recovers its divine nature and can know what it's like to be in existence without suffering. And the capacity of that awakened quality of consciousness that happens is expanded by its ability to continue to meet that which is unawakened in us. If we don't apply the awakened consciousness to that which is still asleep, we will be overtaken and brought back into sleep. We have to let go of the habit of the error of the previous consciousness we've awakened from, and to be able to establish ourselves in this new correction, this new correct relationship with existence as part of the same daily practice as we did as ignorant human beings. Ego perpetuates itself every day it wakes up. Every day it goes to work, every day it interacts, every day it addresses its problem. Spirit can only awaken proportionally if we're doing it every day as well. So there's this effort that is required when we awaken. And this application of effort, the payoff is a greater deepening, a greater fullness, a greater capacity to be in existence, and thus meet what it is we are in truth. What we are in truth is existence, aware of itself, existing, being able to enjoy, to know, to grow, and evolve in the inherent possibility of not only our original nature, but what existence can bring when we're in life in that dynamic, conscious relationship. So much of this has already happened. As a matter of fact, right now, much of this is happening. The world is changing externally, not just internally. This is because of the effort, the sacrifice of previous awakened beings. This is due to the people who have been able to translate that into their lives so that their lives begin to become a more dynamic and true expression of that awakened state. So when we talk about the path of unconditional love, we're talking about moving aligned with a purpose that we were actually born to eventually manifest. First, however, we had to go through the darkness in order to gather the strength to stand, to be able to bring this consciously into lives ourselves. First in us, then in those around us, and then in the world. Okay, there's the whole picture. There's the story. There's the organizing principle. And this is what we're looking to tap into in this program, is to recover that inherent capacity of consciousness you are, so that you can bring this into your life in a more dynamic, real way. Okay, so paragraph 3.
I think you've done it.
Well, let's just read this page.
Well, okay, I go read it, and then we would like some time for meditation tonight.
Yep,
It's
okay.
almost 8:30,
Right.
and we finish at 9. Okay.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yes, it does. Okay. So I'm just going to read the rest of the paper.
I may interrupt you, but
Not for long. Not for long.
I reserve the right.
Okay. In general, love is a greatly misunderstood word. There is a fundamental difference between the experience of human love and that of spiritual love. The key characteristic of human love is that it is conditional, whereas spiritual love is unconditional. Human love is distorted or conditioned by biology, sex, emotions, and mind. And such it suffers all the associated distortions, including lust, infatuation, attachment, clinging, submission, domination, control, jealousy, betrayal, hatred, and vengeance.
Let's say that again.
As
Lust,
such,
infatuation, attachment, clinging, submission, domination, control, jealousy, betrayal, vengeance, hatred. There you go.
There you go. Excellent. Spiritual love, on the other hand, is a spontaneous and freely given expression of the divinity that lives within us and has no expectations, requirements, or conditions.
Because it arises spontaneously from within. Because it has no desire in itself. That just to experience itself is its own fulfillment. Love, the experience of love, is love's own fulfillment. Therefore, when that awakens within us, we move into a loving relationship with existence. And when we move into a loving relationship in existence, existence responds, as it does when we move into hatred into existence. It responds with love to what it is we're bringing into existence. So we become the light of our life. We become the source of that which was missing all along. So this whole movement from outside in to inside out is what we're talking about.
Okay. When the fire of consciousness awakens, it sets in motion a transformational process that opens and purifies our heart, converting our human heart into a means for unconditional love to manifest into the creation. This is divine manifestation. On the spiritual path, unconditional love is the highest expression of our divine potential. Its powerful radiance impacts one who experiences its presence. This radiant force nurtures and empowers the divine presence inherent in each of us, giving the strength and clarity to overcome the obstacles and challenges of the spiritual path. Unconditional love is irresistible and greatly aids the difficult transformative process necessary for one to progress on the spiritual path.
Continue.
There are three forces that transform us from human beings into divine beings. They are truth, consciousness, and love. Truth destroys untruth, and consciousness destroys ignorance. This is the transformative power of truth consciousness, but unconditional love dissolves all separation and barriers. Without the radiant presence of unconditional love, the spiritual path is difficult and demanding as our ego resists and rebels. But the ego surrenders all to unconditional love. This is its magic. With just a touch of this unconditional love, we find the strength to let go and surrender, allowing the force of truth consciousness to enter and to undo all that separates us from divine.
So, three forces transform us: truth, consciousness, and love. Sat, Chit, and Ananda. These forces carry inherent with them the original purpose of existence. They carry that which was the potentiality from which all existence came out of. It carried with it this will to be, to learn, to experience, to know, to grow, to wake up, and to realize itself. So we are all expressions of that original purpose. In fact, everything living is an expression into the becoming of its own beingness, to participate in the unfolding of that purpose. So truth, consciousness, and love is actually a felt current. This is not an imaginary abstraction. This is something, each in its own frequency, can be felt in our body, in our awareness, in our heart. So these forces become available to us when we awaken. And as long as we keep ourselves into that awakened state, these forces, this current, will continue to grow in your body, continue to grow in your heart, will continue to expand your consciousness, continue to expand your ability to recognize truth versus untruth. And it becomes the thing that eventually you could call God, or that you could call the Absolute, or the Lord. It'll become this magnificent principle which you are discovering within yourself. And then you will be able to see the same magnificent principle in everything about you. Everything about you becomes a demonstration of this magnificent principle, Satchitananda, that you're discovering within yourself. Then that's lets you know that you have come to the domain of unconditional love. Unconditional love is the fulfillment of all awakening. It's the fulfillment of the journey to the travel, the traverse of our human life through the arena of darkness and suffering and separation and misery. It is the proof of the maturity of the soul that has fulfilled creation within itself. This is what we point to. So what is true? What is truth? What is in untruth? What is true? Truth is existence itself. Truth for each of us is our awareness of our own existence. So the nature of truth is the dissolving of that which prevents us from knowing, being an awareness of our own existence. So truth dissolves untruth means it basically wakes up what is sleeping to its original nature. So untruth actually isn't untruth. It's just a truth that has not yet been met. It's a truth that has not yet been recognized as actually truth. So we see it as darkness. We see it as untruth. We see it as falsehood. We see it as distortion. But when we awaken, we can see even the suffering is divine. Even the darkness is divine. We can see that the entire creation is kept in existence by the balance of these two principles of truth and untruth, of separation and oneness. And that these principles are what has allowed this existence to come into play. And in this existence, is this the only place in the entire ocean infinity of the Brahmatic field where suffering can exist, where darkness can exist? Every other conscious being that exists, they either previously lived or have never taken birth, beings, they look on the earth and they're in awe of our capacity to suffer, awe at our capacity to endure the error of separative existence. And it's in the anguish of that separation that like a piece of coal, in the pressure of that becomes a diamond. Because something that never loses its original nature. Then this can maneuver through any domains of darkness and be the diamond and be the truth and make room, make space for that truth to pervade the existing darkness. And thus is the battle, thus is the Gita, thus is the journey of consciousness. We all have a role to play in this epic journey that we find ourselves in the middle of the story. That there is a reason you came into birth. There is a purpose behind it. That purpose carries this principle of truth. It carries this principle of awake, self-aware consciousness. It carries this principle of unconditional love. And then that's your mission. That's actually why you were born. It wasn't born to make sure your needs were met. You weren't born to have children and to, be successful, or to any other idea that you created, to be a good athlete, to climb mountains. These are just distractions and bypasses. You're here to serve the expression of the manifestation of this principle of coming into awareness and existence that's able to convert the darkness into light. We are all divine in essence, and as such can recognize and experience this fire of the heart. Understanding this state of being, finding it in ourselves, and learning to live and act in it is itself the way we become established in this divine state. And this is part of the purpose of this program, to demonstrate and not just explain. To demonstrate and give you opportunities to be engaged in this work with yourself, not for your better psychological well-being, not to be a better person, but to become more useful to the world by doing so. When we do something for something greater than ourselves, we go beyond ourselves. When we do something for ourselves, we keep ourselves in ourselves. We have to have a way to organize our intention, to organize our attention, to organize what we live for, to organize the direction of our life, that actually has a large enough arc, a high enough goal, in order for us to discover this possibility. Being happy is not high enough. Being purposeful, however, is deeply more satisfying than happiness. All right. There you have it. Welcome to the arena. So you're going to have an opportunity to experience the energy in the silence and sittings. You're going to have an opportunity to bring this into your own experience in the small groups and share it with others. You're going to have an opportunity to listen to the evening programs and to receive the transmissions. Combining with all these three, I find, is the most effective way to set in motion in you a transformational process which will be possible for you to maintain as you go back into your life. There is my intent. Okay, there you have it. All right, so let's finish with a silent sitting.
And after Shree leaves tonight, I'll stay a few minutes with the list in case you forget which group you're in. Okay.
So tonight we'll only sit for 10 minutes. When this meditation ends, you'll go into silence, but it's conditional silence. So you speak if there is some practical necessity, for example, questions, or if you need to make arrangements to rent a bike or to take care of anything that's outward oriented, just to handle your circumstances. But otherwise, I invite you to keep turning back in to the quality of silence, the quality of presence that comes to you or will come to you over this silent period of continuous sittings. Stay inward as much as you can, even when you're speaking outward.
So, yeah, Saraswati. Yeah, so there's, we are going into silence, but we still have work to do. So they'll be going into the small groups tonight to meet your facilitator. And then I think there's going to be some arrangements discuss on how to set up the room for meditation that we'll be doing every day. So that's where you are talking. So that's perfectly fine. Mary.
No. Each group will have its own separate place to meet privately, and the schedule is already being set up.
No, that's not what we're talking about. She just wanted to know for right now. For tonight.
Yes, that's probably what we'll do. We'll have the people stand in different locations in the room, so you'll go and meet them in the room. So let's do it this way. Group 1 by the entry, group 2 there, group 3 here, group 4 there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let us begin. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat Shri. All glory to Buddha. Namaste.